guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to paint different fillers and flowers. So this is going to be a step-by-step tutorial. I will be teaching you each and every single one of them. So without further ado, let's start.
So for the materials, I have my ever-trusty ceramic palette right here, and then I will be using a couple of half pans from Winsor & Newton, and then I have two round brushes, number 10 and number 4 by Raphael brand. We can start by using this number 4 round brush. I'm gonna pre-wet the brush, and then as you can see, I have a pre-mix of light green right here. I'm adding a few more water to dilute the paint more. We will be painting the first flower. It's called the white Limonium status flower. It's color white but with green undertones. You have to remember, when painting watercolor, as soon as the paint dries, it's going to become a little bit lighter. As you can see, I'm painting irregular shapes that will resemble the buds and then the flowers of the white Limonium status. If you're still not satisfied with the shape of the entire flower, you can add more buds here and there, just like what I'm doing. Also, I'm adding a few more pigment to make the buds look more visible. Now I'm using this brown shade by Winsor & Newton, and as you can see, I'm just lightly connecting each flower and bud all together. While the paint is still wet, you need to work fast because we need for both of the paints to be wet so they can bleed all together. This is the look that we are trying to achieve to make our painting look more realistic. Now we are done with the first flower. We can now proceed to painting the second type of flower. The second flower that we are painting is called the Goldenrod. This time we will be using the shade of yellow, also by Winsor & Newton. And then we will use the same technique that we did earlier while painting the white status flower. I will be painting small irregular shapes that will resemble the buds and the flower of the goldenrod. This time we will paint two sets, and I will be painting a smaller one right beside this one. So the first and the second flower that we are actually painting are actually good for making flower fillers whenever you are painting flower bouquets. As soon as you are done painting the buds and the flowers of the goldenrod, we can now proceed to painting the stem in between. So just like what we did earlier, we will be connecting all the buds and the flowers all together while the paint is still wet, so the paint can actually bleed all together. I decided to add a few more stems and a few twigs coming out of the flower to make our painting look more real. So great, now we are done in painting the first two type of filler flowers. Now we can proceed to painting the third one. This third type of flower filler that we are painting is called the Atlas flower. Atlases are actually small circular golden flowers that you can actually use as flower fillers whenever you are painting flower bouquets. As you can see, I'm using this quick stippling motion as I try to form smaller or bigger circular shapes. You have to remember, while painting Atlas's flower, it doesn't have to be a perfect circle. The edges needs to be a little bit rough. Later on, we will connect all the buds and the flowers all together by painting a stem underneath. What's nice about watercolor is that you can use an old paint that has dried up by activating some water. Now we proceed in painting lavenders. As you can see, I am doing longer and thinner strokes this time. This plant actually produces flowers on shoots or spikes, which can be actually around 20 to 40 centimeters long. So, contrary to the name also, not all lavenders are actually purple. You can also use the colors rose, pale pink, white, or some can even be yellow. Once we are done painting the buds and the flowers of the lavender, we will again insert or paint a very thin stem in between the flowers. Now we move on to painting another type of dainty flower which is very famous when it comes to weddings or classic country gardens. This is called the lilac flower. Lilacs are actually very compact, so as you can see, I am painting the petals closely with one another. Also, the lilacs are easily recognized by their long, often cone-shaped panicles covered in tiny tubular flowers. They are actually best known for being purple, but there are other varieties out there, so you can actually use other colors such as white, blue, yellow, sometimes it can even be pink. So again, we use the same technique that we did earlier. We will paint in the stem and we will try to paint as thinly as possible in between the petals. So as you can see, I'm just filling in the negative spaces in between the flowers. I'm trying to paint as thinly as possible. Now we paint in the main stem of the lilac flower and then I will add a little bit of leaves. Now let's proceed in painting a regular 5-petaled flower. As you can see, I am painting a few petals and I'm using longer strokes this time and I'm painting the petals close together. You have to remember you have to leave a white space or a negative space in between because you have to drop in a little bit of darker pigment in the middle that will resemble the stamen of the flower. Once you are done with the petals, you can finally paint in the stem and then add a few leaves. We are now changing the brush to size 10. This is still a round brush. I actually got this brush from my sister as a gift. She bought this from Japan. Now we are just painting random flowers. I chose a bigger size of brush because I wanted to create bigger size of petals. So if you wish to use a different size, smaller or bigger, you may wish to do so. So we are painting a different perspective this time. This is a side view of the flower. I'm just painting in the petals. Later on, I will add the stem and then a few leaves. Now let's try to paint a flower from the top view. So while the paint is still wet, you have to add a darker pigment in the middle and you have to let the colors bleed. As you can see, I will be using another shade, which is this shade of bright yellow from Winsor & Newton. I love the contrasting shade of yellow and purple, so I'm adding this in the middle that will resemble the stamen of the flower. So now we're done. Now we can proceed in painting the final two main flowers for this tutorial. I will show you how to paint larger flowers with 5 petals this time. So my technique whenever I paint petals is that I often use the C stroke until I get the desired shape of the petal that I want. So as you can see, I am just painting C strokes over and over. So you can just keep on repeating until you are happy with the shape that you have created for the petal. You don't have to create an exact shape or like a perfect form for the petal. As you can see, mine is a little bit uneven. I like it that way because it looks more realistic. Also, while the paint is still wet, you have to remember you have to add in or drop in a darker pigment in the middle so you can actually let the colors bleed. I like the look better that way because it kind of looks more realistic to me. Also, I'm adding a few thin lines or wispy strokes on the side of the petals because it looks kind of pretty. So later on, I will paint in the stamen of this flower. We can now proceed to the second flower. I will use a yellow shade this time, and I will use the exact same steps that we did earlier. Now we can finally proceed in painting the stamen or the middle part of the flower. As you can see, I'm painting in a shade of yellow in the middle part of the red flower, and I'm painting a red shade in the middle part of the yellow flower. You will often see me in my tutorials using the contrasting shade between yellow and red or purple and yellow all together because I love how it blends together. So you have to remember when dropping in the pigment or the undertones for the flowers, you have to add in while the paint is still wet. So now we finish off the stamen of both flowers by dropping in a darker shade of brown in the middle. Great, now we're done. Now you already know how to paint white status flowers, atlases, goldenrods, lilacs, lavenders, and other 5-petaled flowers.
Congrats congratulations in finishing your fillers and flowers tutorial. So I hope you learned a lot from me today. Please don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe button. Of course, you can also leave a comment down below. I hope I can still see you again in my next tutorial soon. Bye!